What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, some bad news broke out of Microsoft when it comes to Xbox Game Pass, with pricing, yes, going up, but also a bit of a shakeup when it comes to the different tiers and them offering day one releases, but we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about, surprisingly, a new Sega console that could be coming out. This, though, is promising to play all the different games across all the different Sega console generations. And then we'll also be talking about Nintendo doing what they do best, sending cease and desist and DMCAs this time again for an emulator that is probably just expected at this point. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps it a ton. And if new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with Hellblade 2. As we, of course, went over the Circana sales results in the US, well, Hellblade 2 was nowhere to be found on the sales charts, even like the top 20 or so. Well, Matt Piscatella did go into a bit more depth here. We can see posted up where he says, getting a lot of questions on this one, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 ranked 37th overall for May 2024 in US full game dollar sales, that's physical and digital for sharing pubs, while ranking 21st on Xbox Series. So obviously we didn't have like a physical copy of Hellblade 2, which probably held it back somewhat. I mean, no retail presence in stores. Yeah, you'll just get less sales in general. But he also mentioned when it comes to engagement, it ranked 12th. Fallout 76 ranked 11th in May, so it's right up against Fallout 76, still out of the top 10. It's bringing up a lot of questions around Hellblade 2's performance here when it comes to, I guess, through Game Pass. That's the only real measure we can kind of hope for here, since 37th in general is just not good for a new release in a month like that. As we see, Ghost of Tsushima jump to the top of the list just from releasing on Steam. So here's hoping Microsoft looks at the numbers and says, all right, those are good, because no one really wants to see Ninja Theory end up getting shut down because of this. I don't really want to see a repeat of what happened with Tango Gameworks, where it sounds like everything was fine with Hi-Fi Rush, and then a year later they get shut down as there's a bit of a shuffling behind the scenes. But at least for now, we can hope that Ninja Theory is safe, as it seems like their next big project has been greenlit, so maybe Hellblade 2 ends up being more of a long tail when it comes to engagement and sales. Also, another patent has appeared online when it comes to Sony and their plans for a temperature-changing controller. This is something that's actually been in the news a couple of times now, but we can see the latest here. This is over on Game Rant, who spotted this patent, saying its patented thermal mechanism would primarily output thermal sensations via shoulder buttons. Okay, even mentioning pseudo pain sensations, and even as well as novel accessibility features. So all right, I guess I can send really hot signals to the shoulder buttons for very mild pseudo pain sensation. I don't know, that's an interesting one there. The idea of temperature shifting, though, I mean, it's been coming up for years, and is that the next step? Maybe. It's different, I guess, and it would work to have more immersion if maybe there's an icy cavern that you're climbing through and the shoulder buttons you're pressing down become very cold, or there's a lava level you're going through and like the walls are hot that you're touching, so the shoulder buttons become warm. It's I don't know, an interesting idea. These are patents, though, and obviously those don't always come to fruition. But it is interesting to note that this has come up multiple times now, so who knows, maybe with the PlayStation 6, the big thing is that your shoulder buttons can get really, really cold. Oh, and while we're about to talk about Game Pass and sort of the pricing structure that they've now introduced, we are expecting more and more games to go in, and it seems that one leaked out a bit early. We can see this posted up. This is by Extras, who says, mini scoop coming to Game Pass, Atlus Fallen. They just say soon, and the way this goes with Game Pass is they put out those Xbox Wire posts, and you'll just see a game just kind of thrown in there. I feel like Atlus Fallen would be one of those games that just appears in like that grid at the top of the page, and this is a game that I've seen, I've noticed, I just haven't felt the need to go out, pick it up, and start playing it right away. It seems like this would be a title that I would just come across in a subscription service like Game Pass, so yeah, good to see it going in. Just not really sure when I'm going to get to it, because there is a lot of stuff I'm still trying to catch up now, and to be honest, Elden Ring is kind of sucking up all the time I have available currently. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft and their announcement for a bit of a shakeup when it comes to Xbox Game Pass, which we've been expecting price increases now for subscription services pretty much across the board, whether it's streaming for video with Disney Plus or Netflix to games with Microsoft, Sony, and I still think Nintendo will be raising their own NSO subscription service here in the near future. Probably with their next generation, you'll see a bump in price there. But Xbox Game Pass did go up in price last summer, and it looks like they're keeping that trend, unfortunately, this summer. As well, you can see this was posted up. This is over on Windows Central, where it seemed like they got confirmation from Microsoft, and then an entire page went live that we'll check out here that tried to dive into some of the finer details, because information was flying all over the place, and some of it was just outright incorrect because it was kind of confusing with the tiers they were throwing around and it kind of being piecemealed together. But I think we have it figured out here. So we'll go over this starting from the top. With these price changes and tiers going into effect July 10th, so today, for new member subscriptions. Okay, so if you already have a subscription, you're still locked in one way or the other. Even if the tier is still not something you can sign up for, it will still be in place seemingly up through 2025, because you're able to stack months and months of, say, a Game Pass console going into the end of 2025. But anyway, those new subscriptions for members are in place right now. Starting September 12th, 2024, the price of recurring charges will change for existing members. So if you are currently signed up for Game Pass Ultimate, the price increase will be affecting you at that time. Now, if we take a look at the different tiers, as we can see, Tom Moran did his best to also put this together in a tweet, even citing some of the current tiers that you may be signed up for and what they offer. But we have Xbox Game Pass Core. That is Xbox Live Gold, essentially, that has that small library of games included. That is going up to $75 per year. That does have the online multiplayer included for quote-unquote premium paid games. We have Xbox Standard. That's $14.99 a month. This is the new tier that they've discussed. It has no day one games, no cloud streaming, but it will have, according to them, just a back catalog of titles. We still need to find out what exactly the time period is, as there obviously there's some kind of grace period for what do you then consider as going into a back catalog. Is it a year? So you wait for a year, maybe 6 months from a new release that then goes into the Xbox Standard catalog. We'll find out more from Microsoft, I'm sure, as we go along. But PC Game Pass, that is going up $2 to $11.99 a month. This will include day one games. So technically, there you go. That's the cheapest, I guess, we have right now in Game Pass that would include the day one releases. And then Game Pass Ultimate is going up from $16.99 to $19.99 per month, so $20 per month. That, of course, will have day one releases, cloud streaming, Xbox Live, online multiplayer, everything. It is the ultimate tier to pick up. And obviously, it's not good news when game prices in general go up or subscription service prices. It's just not. You got to pay more for what you already had technically with something like Game Pass Ultimate. That said, I don't know if a $2 to $3 increase per month is going to be enough to have people with Ultimate just completely cancel at that point, because they're probably already taking advantage of day one releases, and they've most likely committed to the subscription service for the foreseeable future. Although I'm sure some will say, you know what, we've now gone up to $20 per month from what originally was like $10 per month a couple of years ago when they initially announced the whole thing. And that's like, okay, we've doubled in price. That's a bit too much for me. The thing for me, again, I expect subscription services nowadays to go up in price with everything that's happened with inflation and just being a trend seemingly across the industry for just entertainment. It's the tier without the day one releases that sort of goes against what they really introduced the entire service as, which was that you get day one releases into Game Pass outright from first-party studios, and now we have a tier that's $15 a month that just doesn't have access to that. Obviously, the clear strategy here is, if you get in for Standard, we're trying to then push you to Ultimate. And I think with how Game Pass for PC is positioned now with its price point, they're having a hard time getting subscription services outside of the Xbox console. Like, getting signups for it isn't going as quickly, I think, as they were hoping it would initially, and it's kind of flatlined. And we've seen this in sales reports from Circana and other places that track kind of the statistics across the industry. Just subscription services in general are not climbing like they did, obviously, in 2020 and during the pandemic, when just everything was exploding with subscription services because everyone was just at home looking for something to do. I think this also introduces kind of a confusing tier system somewhat. I feel like the best way to go about this is just have one subscription tier, but Microsoft is trying to make it so it's as approachable as possible with the price points, and I do think they will get to a position where they can have either a free or very, very cheap setup where you have ads that are interstitched in your games, whether it's when you pause the game or you go to a load screen or before you fire a game up, there's a timer that then says, okay, now you have to watch 2 minutes worth of ads before you can get into your game, and then we'll see you in another hour for another few minutes of ads. But that's where we are with Xbox Game Pass. Expect Game Pass Ultimate to cost you $20 per month if you're already paying it, and then if you look towards something like Xbox Game Pass Standard, you're not going to have those day one releases. So interesting stuff here for Game Pass and the way that Microsoft is approaching this, of course, going towards the big release this holiday with Call of Duty. Next up, let's talk about a new Sega console that's apparently in the works from fans. I say in the works because there's still a lot of things they have to accomplish before the system comes to fruition at all. But I think the idea is interesting, and it seems like the people backing it do know what they're doing and could create this system, so much so that they've even reached out to Sega. Well, we can see this posted up. This is over on Time Extension, who had a couple of reports around this, and I'll have it linked down below if you'd like to look at a bit more information when it comes to the people making it, as well as some of the images or the mock-ups of what they believe the system will look like. But they say a team of Spanish Sega fans are looking to build the ultimate Sega console capable of running Mega Drive, Genesis, Master System, SC3000, SG1000, Saturn, and Dreamcast games. This is called the SuperSega. Use a Vertex Ultra-Scale FPGA chip in order to replicate the performance of these systems as accurately as possible. It's also going to feature Wi-Fi, Bluetooth connectivity, an SD card slot. There's an optical drive that will be a CD, DVD reader, writer, contained within a transparent bay within the console's unusual bodywork. There's 8 joystick ports. These will be included, allowing Sega fans to use their original controllers, and there will also be USB ports. You might be wondering, what does this thing look like? Well, there is an image over on their Time Extension site that's at least kind of a mock-up, a bit of a drawing here, and I mean, it looks all right. It looks more compact, I'll say, than what I would expect a system to play these many systems from Sega's generation of consoles. Now, they did reach out to Sega with the idea of licensing this. They say recently contacted a few people at Sega regarding licenses. It would be great if the console could ship with some ROMs inside, licensed by Sega, of course. I think users will welcome the chance to pay a little bit more if it means the inclusion of some great Sega classics. We are waiting for a reply from Sega, and then we will see. You know, I'm curious how Sega would go about this. I mean, maybe the inclusion of games might be a step too far, but them doing some sort of official licensing deal with them where they can use the naming for Sega, the logo, that would actually be a good avenue for them as well. Having a pack-in game or two would be great for that, but I think most people look at this to just play their original titles anyway from their Dreamcast discs, although they did mention that the GD-ROM thing is something they'd have to figure out. Otherwise, you'd be able to just load, I guess, your ISOs from an SD card, but I don't know, that still kind of defeats the idea of for the purist who wants to be able to put their actual disc in the system, that would kind of be, I assume, a turnoff for them. But I think having a way to play Sega Saturn there, as well as your Sega Genesis, Master System, and plugging in your original controllers, really, really cool idea. But it is still an idea as they are working to get the prototype phase pretty much underway and be able to present something that would then lead to funding, as they don't want to collect money until they have at least something tangible to present. So definitely, I think something to keep an eye on here to see if it does actually come to market and if Sega responds, even if it's not just with pack-in games, but with official licensing, because then we could say, yes, a brand new Sega system is coming out. Although it would play older games, but I think it'd still be a lot of fun to pick up. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo and what they do best: cease and desist and DMCA notices. In this case, it's for an emulator that probably shouldn't surprise too many people based on how aggressive Nintendo has been recently, whether it's with Yuzu or with Vim. They've been all over the map currently, especially when it comes to Switch stuff, but even some of their legacy games. Well, we can see this is posted up. This was noted by My Nintendo News with, we have Jared Norwell, saying Sudachi repo was DMCA'd. Yes, I'll be countering as it doesn't provide any illegal content. Now they go on to say, quick update regarding Sudachi. I've started replacing code with libhack and am still waiting on a response from GitHub. I've also looked into 1201, which is referenced in every DMCA by the same person, and from my understanding, the emulator is fine. Now that DMCA that they're noticing here with the 1201 does mention Yuzu, which a lot of these emulators are forks from Yuzu and Nintendo, who not only took down Yuzu, but they took their website, they fined them millions of dollars, they took ownership of the code for it. Nintendo clearly is thinking, okay, any of these Yuzu forks we have ownership of for the code, so we can then DMCA take down these things and we can kill them before they even get out there with any legitimate concern from us for what it's able to play. As even a fork of Yuzu, there's still a lot of work that goes into making it play games 100% or just like 100% speed. You might have like broken games that run at 50% speed or something. But for Sudachi, it seems like this person's still trying to figure out how they can get around that as they're replacing code and changing things up. And I just don't think Nintendo really cares. As bad as it sounds, this is what happens when a large corporation like this, who has a ton of experience in the courtroom and a ton of money, can just kind of run you through the ringer, for lack of a better term, when it comes to just the system with these legal situations. And that's kind of what I think Nintendo is looking to do with most of these forks and stuff, is just, hey, we'll just bury you in paperwork and DMCAs and basically scare you to the point where you just start taking stuff down and you don't even try to approach it. I'll be curious if they decide to continue to butt heads with Nintendo and what exactly comes from it. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation Plus Extra, as we are expecting some announcements for different games going into the service. And it does appear that we might see some of these announcements actually as soon as today. But D-Labs did actually put out some of the games that'll be going into the service a bit early, so we can take a look at some of those now, as D-Labs has a very, very good track record when it comes to this stuff, so much so that we pretty much believe that they have access to some sort of back end or marketing or just something to where they're this confident with games, which we can see the list here. Starting at the top with Remnant 2, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, it's an enhanced edition, Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, No More Heroes 3, and then Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes Complete Edition. I think No More Heroes 3 going in, that's really cool to have that, as well as Travis Strikes Again, especially if you've been kind of curious. No More Heroes 3 is a very fun game, and it runs well on the PlayStation 5. I would say, though, for me, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion is an awesome game to go into this service, and I do think more people should be checking that one out. I mean, obviously, Square put that game out, did like the remaster remake treatment for it with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming up, and yes, there was a fairly large focus on Zack as almost a main character. So I would expect that to continue into the third one, but definitely check out Final Fantasy VII Reunion Crisis Core if you have not already. Again, provided it gets announced in the next day or two for this month, because it is a very different kind of Final Fantasy experience. A very good one, but definitely very different. Though this so far looks like a pretty good lineup for the month of July, so we'll see if there are any other surprises in there, especially when it comes to maybe some of the retro titles. I'm thinking maybe PS2 section for this month. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what was your favorite Sega home console? Dreamcast is number one, which, I mean, I get Dreamcast does have a lot of fond memories, obviously, but Genesis and Mega Drive, that was such an awesome time in gaming, that 16-bit era. Sega versus Nintendo. It was much more cutthroat back then. The Saturn, though, at 5%, yeah, that's about right. I mean, the Master System is behind it, which I think that makes sense. That's probably the most unknown system on this list. But the Saturn just did not work out well there for Sega. And while the Dreamcast was just a much better system, it was too late for Sega at that time. They were just kind of running out of money and they had to exit the console scene. But yeah, definitely the Dreamcast, and for me, the Genesis are probably the two big ones for me from Sega. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Black Fox, who says, why not complete Luigi's Mansion series? They somehow still find reasons to postpone releasing Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on Switch, and you wonder about Luigi's Mansion games. Logic isn't something applicable here. Well, Nintendo does like to make, we'll say, strange announcements at times, ones that don't really line up for what we think their strategy should be. They'll just do something weird at it. Like, remember when the 2DS XL got announced, and it was just so random and out of nowhere. We were all talking about the Switch, and Nintendo's like, hey, here's a new system in the 3DS family. It was very weird. But we also, Luigi's Mansion was the same kind of thing, right? It was announced after the Switch had come out. Okay, I guess we'll have Luigi's Mansion on the 3DS, not on the Switch. So it wouldn't shock me if Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, a bundle, gets announced after their next system comes out. Although I guess it wouldn't matter as much because we assume it'll be backwards compatible, but that does seem like a very Nintendo-like move. We all kind of give up on the idea of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess coming out, and then they make an announcement for the original Switch after, we'll say, the Switch 2 comes out. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the Game Pass announcement for the shuffling of the tiers and the price increase for something like Ultimate? Where do you fall right now on that, and are you still currently subscribed to the service? And then also, what about this Super Sega console? Would you buy a system that plays all the different games from Sega's generations? And then, how much do you think that thing would cost? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.